Mr. President, by all accounts, America has made a remarkable recovery in the last 2 years. When President Biden entered office, we faced the worst public health crisis in the history of our country, the most daunting economic challenge since the Great Depression, and a global upheaval that disrupted every aspect of our lives. 2 years later, America is coming back. Thanks to the work of our Democratic majority, the cost of living is finally coming down, but we're not out of the woods yet. If you travel in my state of Illinois, which I've been doing over the last several weeks, especially in central and southern Illinois, you'll notice the same sign hanging in one business after another: help wanted. I can't help but notice that in my hometown of Springfield, there's a franchise of chicken fingers that's going to be opening soon. There's a sign outside the soon-to-be completed building which said $15 an hour, please call us, to work in fast food. While businesses are reopening their doors and demand for goods and services has rebounded, America is still struggling with a shortage of workers. I hear it everywhere, particularly in the healthcare sector, where the shortage of nurses and medical professionals really creates a hardship in the center city as well as in the urban areas, small towns, large cities alike. This shortage of medical professionals is a national emergency, which I'll address at another time. In addition to that, we've got to ask ourselves, well, what's the reason for the shortage? Make no mistake, the decision of the Trump administration to cut down legal immigration to the United States is one of the reasons. We have about usually 1 million immigrants a year, legal immigrants, to come to work. During the Trump years, the total 4 years was 1 million. So they cut it by 3/4 the number. And we wonder why we're still looking for workers. Let's be very honest about it. Whether in the city of Chicago, Springfield, or downstate Illinois, these immigrant workers are willing to take jobs which many Americans will not take, to work harder at them and to really do their best to help their families get started in this country. That's the story of America, and it's a story that needs to be repeated because immigration labor at this point is critical, not just in the cities, but in the agricultural areas, as this presiding officer knows well from New Mexico. We need workers, and we need good ones, and immigrants can be part of that workforce. At the same time, there's a fundamental problem in our economy that we need to be addressing honestly. The work-life balance is out of whack. Today, fewer and fewer Americans are willing to work long hours for survival wages, especially when they have urgent personal and family responsibilities at home, like caring for an infirm parent or a newborn. Last month, I received a letter from one of my constituents in Illinois. It speaks to the problems facing parents and caregivers, as well as many others. She wrote, and I quote, "My husband and I both have good jobs. We have 3 kids. The cost of child care accounts for over 1/4 of our monthly take-home pay. All of our other bills combined don't even equal it. I can only imagine the burden," she said, "on other families. No wonder unemployment is so high. How can people afford to, or even find child care?" This constituent asked if Congress has any plans to revive the enhanced child tax credit that we included in the American Rescue Plan. I wish I could tell her yes, but sadly, the new Republican majority in the House of Representatives does not even mention this as a priority in the future. Daycare and child care and caregivers are a critical part of family life for so many Americans, and yet the Republicans, at least in the House of Representatives, are ignoring the reality. Beyond the tax credit, the child tax credit, her letter makes one thing clear: our safety net has too many holes in America. And if a parent working full-time job can still fall through that, then clearly we have work to do. I think about that constituent story as we approach the 30th anniversary of the Family and Medical Leave Act this Sunday. Back in 1993, this law passed Congress with broad bipartisan support. And in the decades since, more than 315 million workers have relied on it to take care of themselves and their family members. It's hard to imagine, but in the days before the Family and Medical Leave Act, America had 0 federal job protections for workers with a new baby or a sick family member at home. So this law was a massive victory for working families, but today it's just not enough. The Family and Medical Leave Act guarantees 12 weeks of unpaid leave for workers. How does that help pay for the diapers, the formula, medications? Well, it just doesn't. And worse yet, many full-time workers are excluded from the law's basic job protections. In Illinois alone, nearly 60% of working adults don't qualify for unpaid leave under Family Medical Leave Act. 6 out of 10 workers. Here's the bottom line. If you want to get America back to work, you need to back them up. The Family and Medical Leave Act is a promising foundation, but it just isn't enough. We need to modernize the American safety net for a new generation of workers. Think about this. Over the next decade, adults over the age of 65 are projected to outnumber children in America for the first time in our history. That's going to make life even more challenging for the 53 million Americans who are today also already serving as caregivers for a family member or partner. This is particularly challenging for young Americans. 1 in 4 family caregivers is a millennial who on average spends 21 hours a week caring for a loved one at home. That's more than half of a full work week, and they don't see a dollar for it. These Americans, many of whom are also balancing a full-time job with full-time responsibilities as a caregiver, really need our help. They deserve it, at least a living wage to start with. But our federal minimum wage is a starvation wage. There's not a single part of the country where $7.25 an hour is enough. Not even close. Let's raise it. While we're at it, let's also revive that enhanced child tax credit that reduced child poverty in America by 1/3. Think about that. Kids living in poverty were reduced, the total was reduced by 1/3 just from the child tax credit. That's breathing room for a lot of parents to make ends meet. And if we really want to help Americans get back to work, we should start by building on the success of the Family and Medical Leave Act. Today, I'm reintroducing the Caring for All Families Act. It will expand protections of Family Medical Leave Act and ensure a broader range of caregiving relationships are covered. In 2020, the Department of Labor found that 1 in 6 people taking leave to act as a caregiver were not protected by the Family and Medical Leave Act's definition of family. It really begs the question, how many of these people decided to drop out of the workforce altogether? How many of them were fired because they missed a shift because their child woke up with a fever or because an elderly relative was rushed to the ER? No one should ever have to choose between caring for a loved one or losing their job. The Caring for All Families Act will help protect these workers by adding domestic partners, in-laws, grandparents, and other significant relationships to the FMLA's definition of family. And importantly, this legislation would just be a starting point. While it would expand job protection to millions of workers, it would not resolve one crucial flaw in our safety net. America is the only industrialized nation in the world that does not have guaranteed paid family leave. I'm going to repeat that. America is the only industrialized nation in the world that does not guarantee paid family leave. That is shameful. And for the millions of working Americans who have or will be caregivers at some point in their life, what are they supposed to do? Take on debt? Work even more hours? No. We cannot settle for a system that abandons working families when they need it the most. The American people deserve a safety net that prevents them from drowning, a safety net that provides the peace of mind they need to re-enter the workforce and offers them the assurance that their government has their back. So let's start. Let's pass the Caring for All Families Act and then get to work to ensure access to paid leave for all American workers. Mr. President, I yield the floor. Suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Ms. Baldwin.